A farmer in Iowa walks up to his Massey-Harris 55. The tractor rolled off the assembly line in 1949, 75 years ago. He grabs the crank handle, gives it one solid pull, and the engine fires up on the first try. No hesitation, no sputtering. Just that deep, steady rumble of a Continental Red Seal engine that's been running since Truman was president. Meanwhile, plenty of farmers are scrapping certain tractors. From the 2000s, electronics failed. Transmissions grenaded. Engines seized way earlier than they should. Machines that cost six figures are now parts donors. So what did Massey-Harris do differently in 1947 that let this tractor outlive 3 generations of farmers? The answer isn't luck. It's an engineering philosophy that disappeared the moment accountants started designing tractors instead of engineers. Massey-Harris faced a decision in 1946 that would define the company's legacy. World War II just ended. Factories that built tanks and aircraft were retooling for peacetime production. Farmers across North America were desperate for new equipment after years of rationing and making do with worn-out machines from the 1930s. Every tractor manufacturer saw the same opportunity. Ford, International Harvester, John Deere. They all knew farmers had money to spend and fields that needed plowing. The question was, what kind of tractor to build? Most companies chose the obvious path: build something affordable, get it to market fast, and sell volume. Massey-Harris went the opposite direction. They decided to build a tractor that would never need replacing. The Massey-Harris 55 debuted in 1947 as the company's flagship row crop tractor. It was a statement machine, the kind of iron that made other manufacturers nervous because it challenged everything they believed about the market. Farmers looked at the price tag and winced. The 55 cost significantly more than a comparable Ford or Farmall. In some markets, you could buy a Ford 8N and still have money left over compared to what Massey-Harris was asking for the 55. The specs told the story of where that money went. The Continental Red Seal engine displaced 382 cubic inches. The frame was cast iron, massive, and uncompromising. The whole machine weighed in at over 6,000 pounds, 1,000 pounds heavier than tractors with similar horsepower ratings. Dealers struggled to explain the premium. A farmer could look at a spec sheet and see similar horsepower numbers on cheaper tractors. The 55 made around 50 horsepower at the drawbar. So did tractors that cost considerably less. What wasn't obvious from the spec sheet was how Massey-Harris achieved that power. The Continental engine ran at 1,350 RPM. Competitors were running their engines at 1,600, 1,800, even 2,000 RPM to hit similar power figures. That difference in engine speed seemed minor. It wasn't. Massey-Harris wasn't selling a tractor for the next 5 years. They were selling a tractor for the next 50 years. The engineers knew something the accountants at competing companies either didn't understand or didn't care about. Every revolution counts. Run an engine slower, and it lasts dramatically longer. Build the frame heavier, and it never cracks. Oversize every component, and nothing becomes a weak point. Farmers who bought cheap in 1947 got exactly what they paid for. Farmers who bought the 55 got a tractor their grandchildren would still be using. The Continental Red Seal engine in the Massey-Harris 50 was designed around a principle that sounds counterintuitive. Slower is better. Most tractor engines in 1947 were racing toward higher RPMs, Ford's engines spun at 2,000 RPM. International Harvester's Farm All engines ran around 1,650 RPM. John Deere was pushing similar numbers. The logic seemed sound. Spin the engine faster. Extract more power from fewer cubic inches. Keep costs down. Massey-Harris looked at those numbers and went the other direction. The Continental engine in the 55 was governed at 1,350 RPM. That's 650 fewer revolutions per minute than a Ford engine. Over an hour of operation, that's 39,000 fewer cycles. Over a season, millions fewer. The math is brutal. Engine wear isn't linear, it's nonlinear. An engine running at 2,000 RPM doesn't wear twice as fast as one running at 1,000 RPM. It wears much faster because heat builds up, friction increases, and every cycle adds stress to metal moving against metal at high speed. The damage compounds. The 55's engine barely broke a sweat. You can literally hear it. More like a slow industrial pump than a screaming engine. Owners have reported 10,000 to 15,000 hours without major overhauls, and a few well-maintained examples are said to push far beyond that. Those numbers were unheard of in an era when 5,000 hours was considered good service life. But the engine was just the beginning. The frame on the 55 weighed over 1,000 pounds more than equivalent tractors. Massey-Harris used cast iron for the main frame rails and transmission housing. Look at the transmission housing. Thick, one-piece iron, like a bridge support. Competitors were switching to stamped steel to save weight and cost. Stamped steel is lighter, cheaper to produce, and easier to form into complex shapes. It also cracks. Put enough stress cycles on stamped steel, and it fatigues. Welds fail. Frames develop hairline fractures that spread until the whole structure is compromised. Cast iron doesn't care. You can stress it for decades, and it just absorbs the punishment. The 55's frame was overbuilt to the point of absurdity. It could handle forces far beyond what the engine could produce. That meant no weak points, no stress risers, no surprise failures after 10,000 hours. The transmission followed the same philosophy. Massey-Harris used straight-cut gears built like truck components. These weren't the lightweight gears you'd find in a car. They were chunks of hardened steel designed to transfer enormous amounts of torque without flexing or wearing. The gear teeth were cut deep. The shafts were oversized. The bearings were rated for loads the tractor would never see in normal operation. It was engineering overkill in the best possible way. The cooling system was equally overbuilt. The radiator on the 55 was massive, significantly larger than what the engine actually required. Most manufacturers sized radiators to just barely keep engines cool under maximum load. Massey-Harris sized theirs to keep the engine cool under conditions that would never happen in real-world use. The result was an engine that never overheated. Farmers could run the 55 in 100-degree heat, pulling heavy loads through tough soil, and the temperature gauge barely moved. The engine ran cool, which meant longer oil life, less thermal stress, and components that lasted indefinitely. This wasn't accidental over-engineering. This was deliberate. Massey-Harris made a calculated decision to build a tractor that would outlive its owners. While other manufacturers were designing tractors to sell replacements every 10 years, Massey-Harris was designing a tractor that would still be working in the year 2000. They succeeded. Walk onto farms today, and you'll find 55s still earning their keep 75 years later. And this is where the story gets brutal, because the 55 was too good at its job. Strip away the mythology, and you're left with 3 engineering decisions that explain everything. Low RPM means fewer cycles and less heat. That Continental engine, turning at 1,350 RPM experiences millions fewer stress cycles than engines spinning at 2,000 RPM. Heat stays manageable. Oil stays effective longer. Components last. Overbuilt iron means no fatigue cracking. Cast iron handles decades of abuse without the fatigue cracking stamped steel. C's. The 55's frame could handle forces the engine could never produce. No weak points means nothing fails. Simple systems mean no proprietary failure points. The 55 uses standard bearings, basic hydraulics, and mechanical controls. When something wears out, you replace it with parts from any industrial supplier. No dealer lock-in, no obsolete electronics. It's not magic. It's mass, simplicity, and conservative engineering. Ford looked at the Massey-Harris 55 and saw a mistake. International Harvester saw a tractor that would never generate repeat sales. John Deere saw a company that didn't understand modern manufacturing. They were all wrong, but it would take decades for that to become obvious. The 1950s brought a revolution in tractor design, and it moved in the exact opposite direction of everything Massey-Harris believed. Lighter was better, faster was better, cheaper was better. The market wanted tractors that cost less up front, and manufacturers were happy to oblige. Ford's 8N became the best-selling tractor in America by undercutting everyone on price. International Harvester's Farm All line dominated by offering more features for less money. John Deere built its empire on tractors that were affordable enough for small farmers. All of them used the same formula: stamped steel frames, higher revving engines, lighter components, and designs that prioritized initial cost over longevity. A farmer could buy a Ford 8N for $1,200 in 1950. The Massey-Harris 55 cost nearly double that. The market spoke clearly. Farmers bought the cheaper tractors. Massey-Harris struggled to move inventory. Dealers complained that the 55 was impossible to sell against Ford's pricing. The company's market share dropped through the late 1940s and into the 1950s. In 1953, Massey-Harris merged with Ferguson to survive. The merger created Massey-Harris-Ferguson, later shortened to Massey-Ferguson. The 55 continued in production through 1956, but the writing was on the wall. The market had moved on. Production numbers tell the story. Ford built over 500,000 units of the 8N. International Harvester produced hundreds of thousands of Farmall tractors. The Massey-Harris 55 never came close to those numbers. It was a commercial disappointment by every metric that mattered in the 1950s. But here's what nobody predicted in 1956. Far fewer of the tractors that outsold the 55 are still working daily. You can find Ford 8Ns at collector shows, and some still running, but the survival rate is dramatically lower. The stamped steel frames cracked. The higher revving engines wore out. The lightweight components failed. Most were scrapped decades ago. The Massey-Harris 55s that farmers reluctantly bought in 1947, they're still running, still plowing, still earning their keep 75 years later. The competition won the battle for 1950s market share. Massey-Harris won the war for longevity. The farmers who bought cheap learned an expensive lesson over the following decades. They bought 2 tractors, then 3, then 4, while the guy who spent extra on the 55 in 1947 was still running the same machine in 1990. The irony is perfect. The tractor that nearly bankrupted Massey-Harris became the tractor that proved their engineering philosophy was right all along. It just took 50 years for the market to realize it. By the time manufacturers figured out that farmers were willing to pay more for durability, the knowledge of how to build like Massey-Harris had been lost. The engineers who designed the 55 were retired or dead. The tooling was scrapped. The institutional knowledge disappeared. Modern manufacturers looked at the 55's design and saw inefficiency. They saw wasted material. They saw a product that would cannibalize future sales. They saw everything except what mattered. A machine that actually worked. The 10-second blueprint on low RPM, overbuilt iron, and oversized drivetrain. Get those 3 right, and the tractor stops aging. Today, you can walk onto farms across North America and find Massey-Harris 55s that rolled off the assembly line between 1947 and 1956. They're not museum pieces. They're not lawn ornaments. They're working tractors doing the same jobs they were built to do 75 years ago. That reality shouldn't exist. By every principle of modern manufacturing, these machines should have been scrapped decades ago. The technology is obsolete. The design is outdated. Parts should be impossible to find. But the 55 doesn't care about what should be possible. The collector market figured out what the 55 represents before most people did. A restored Massey-Harris 55 in good condition commands premium prices at auction. You'll pay more for a 75-year-old 55 than you will for many tractors from the 1980s and the 1990s. That price premium isn't nostalgia. It's recognition of genuine value. Farmers who still run 55s for daily work tell the same story. The tractor starts every time. The engine doesn't burn oil. The transmission shifts smooth. The hydraulics work. These aren't machines being babied. They're being used hard, the way Massey-Harris intended. One farmer in Minnesota runs a 1952 model for haying every summer. He's put 18,000 hours on it. The engine has never been apart. He changes the oil, greases the fittings, and it keeps running. His neighbor bought a modern tractor in 2015 for $180,000. That machine is already having transmission problems at 4,200 hours. The parts availability story is almost as remarkable as the tractor itself. Because Massey-Harris overbuilt everything, the 55 uses common, simple components. The engine is a Continental. Parts are still available. The transmission uses standard gears and bearings. The hydraulics are basic and rebuildable. Compare that to a modern tractor with electronic fuel injection, computerized transmissions, and proprietary hydraulic systems. When something breaks, you're calling the dealer and waiting for parts that might cost thousands of dollars. When something breaks on a 55, you're calling a bearing supplier or a machine shop. The engineering philosophy that made the 55 expensive in 1947 makes it cheap to own in 2024. Modern tractors represent the opposite philosophy. A new John Deere or Case IH costs $200,000 to $300,000. They're technological marvels with GPS guidance, automated systems, and incredible capabilities. They're also designed to last exactly as long as the warranty period, plus a few thousand hours. At 5,000 hours, expensive things start breaking. At 8,000 hours, you're looking at major repairs that cost as much as a used car. At 10,000 hours, you're deciding whether to rebuild or replace. The math always pushes you toward replacement because the repair costs approach the value of the machine. That's not accidental. That's designed obsolescence working exactly as intended. The failure points on modern tractors aren't mechanical. They're systemic. Electronics are the first killer. A modern tractor has dozens of control modules, sensors, and computerized systems. One sensor throws a code, and suddenly you're in limp mode, hauling nothing. You can't bypass it. You can't fix it in the field. You're dead in the water until a dealer technician arrives with a laptop to diagnose and clear codes. On the 55, you rebuild it with bearings and seals from any industrial supplier. On a modern tractor, one control module dies, and you're looking at a $3,000 part and a week of downtime. Proprietary systems are the second killer. Modern tractors use manufacturer-specific hydraulic components, electronic fuel injection systems, and transmissions that require dealer-only tools to service. When something breaks, you can't take it to a local machine shop. You're locked into the dealer network for parts and service. The 55 uses standard bearings, rebuildable pumps, and mechanical linkages, the kind of parts you can source from an industrial supplier instead of a dealership parts counter. Any competent mechanic can work on it. Any machine shop can fabricate replacement parts if needed. Complexity is the third killer. Modern tractors have so many interdependent systems that diagnosing problems becomes nearly impossible without factory diagnostic equipment. A simple issue cascades into multiple system failures. What should be a minor repair becomes a major overhaul because you can't isolate the problem. The 55 systems are independent and simple. The engine, transmission, and hydraulics don't talk to each other through computers. When something breaks, you know exactly what failed and how to fix it. The Massey-Harris 55 proves it didn't have to be this way. Durability was always possible. The engineering knowledge existed. The materials were available. The manufacturing capability was there. What changed wasn't the ability to build durable equipment. What changed was the business model. Massey-Harris built tractors that lasted forever and nearly went bankrupt. Their competitors built tractors that wore out and dominated the market. The lesson was clear. Durability and profit don't mix. Except the 55 proves that's a false choice. The farmers who bought the 55 got incredible value over its lifetime. Yes, they paid more up front, but they never bought a second tractor, or a third, or a fourth. The total cost of ownership over 75 years is a fraction of what farmers spent replacing cheaper tractors every decade. The 55 wasn't built to last 100 years by accident. Every decision Massey-Harris made, the low-revving engine, the cast-iron frame, the oversized components, the conservative design, was a deliberate choice to prioritize longevity over short-term profit. The 55s still running today didn't survive by luck. They survived because owners understood basic maintenance principles. Keep the cooling system clean. That oversized radiator is your insurance policy. Flush it annually. Check hoses. Replace the thermostat every few years. The engine runs cool by design, but only if the cooling system does its job. Change the oil religiously. The Continental engine isn't picky about oil type, but it is picky about oil condition. Change it based on hours, not calendar time. Run quality oil. Check it frequently. That low-revving engine will run forever if the oil stays clean. Grease everything. The 55 has grease fittings on every moving joint. Use them. Grease is cheap. Worn pins and bushings aren't. 5 minutes with a grease gun after every use prevents thousands of dollars in repairs. Store it properly. The 55's cast iron frame doesn't rust easily, but it will rust if you leave it sitting in wet conditions. Keep it under cover when possible. If you're storing it for winter, change the oil before storage, not after. Fresh oil prevents corrosion. The 55 was designed to last. Your job is just to not screw it up. The Massey-Harris 55 represents an engineering philosophy that died with it. No manufacturer builds tractors this way anymore because the business model doesn't reward durability. But every 55 still running 75 years later proves what's possible when engineers design for permanence instead of replacement cycles. That Continental engine firing up on the first crank isn't just impressive. It's evidence that we chose planned obsolescence when we could have chosen something better. That's why a 1949 tractor still starts on the first crank, and a 2015 tractor might need a dealer laptop just to move. Tell us in the comments if you've ever run a Massey-Harris 55 or know someone who still does.